Bring your brooms because the Washington Nationals, they're a mess.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Clary. To the everydayers out there, you know where to find me at Ryan Clary11 over on Twitter, and as well as the show page at LO_Nationals. And today's show is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB or enter promo code LockedOnMLB for a free water bottle with any order. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you that. And so we all know what has happened. We all know. But later on in the show, the Dodgers are coming to town tonight against the Washington Nationals. Mackenzie Gore is back from the bereavement list. We'll discuss that series just a little bit later on. But the big story of today's show is ownership. If you aren't aware yet, Nationals ownership group is a complete, utter mess. A disaster, you could say. Over the last 24 hours or so, multiple stories and reports have been coming out from The Athletic with Ken Rosenthal, Britt Droly, Jesse Doherty from the Washington Post. And it first started off with Steven Strasburg's, not retirement ceremony, but retirement press conference that was going to be set for tomorrow, Saturday, September 9th. And now that is not happening anymore. And at this moment, there's really no reason as to why that is, but we'll discuss that part a little bit later on. Today, Ken Rosenthal dropped the story about this Nationals ownership mess. And as the Nationals, they laid off about basically almost their entire scouting department. And if you remember back in 2021, when the Nationals were, as well as the rest of the world, was recovering from the COVID pandemic and everyone was tight with money, we're out of that stage now. And plus, at the end of the day, you're billionaires. You are. You're on the top 400 Forbes list. I believe you're in the top 200 in the United States of America. And you're laying off people for what seems to be penny and dimes compared to what you really should be paying your front office people. So the Nationals made these layoffs with their scouts, and obviously that kind of sounded alarm bells. My optimistic take with this whole momentum shift in the front office and really what has been such a great last month for this Nationals team has kind of seemed not so much anymore. So they lay off the scouting department, not the entirety of it, but a lot of them. And also some of these people that were just hired over the last few years that Mike Rizzo kind of pinpointed. And also, this is something to really kind of take note of. Mike Rizzo is from this scouting background. This is really something that's going to grind his gears. Now, obviously, he's not going to come out and publicly say that at this moment. But this Nationals team, the Lerner family, Mark Lerner to be exact, they are in negotiations with Mike Rizzo. And we all know that this team has kind of been up and down whether they're going to sell the team or not. And at this moment in time, I've always kind of said, I'm not that really down on the Lerner family. I don't really buy into all this stuff that they are the worst ownership ever. Like, I just don't really see it that way. I think they've done a fine job until the last 24 hours. I am switching my stance. What has happened here? Not only are you being an embarrassment with the Steven Strasburg stuff, but you're also now doing a bunch of these layoffs yet again. And at this moment in time, as I said yesterday, I thought this was going to be a little bit of a change of direction, kind of more of an analytical approach to the game. But from what it seems as if they're just cutting costs at this point, meaning they're not going to be going the analytical route. They're not going to be going the scouting route. They are just trying to penny pinch and save money at this moment. And that's not okay. For a team that is in the middle of a rebuild, for a team that has all this momentum with all the young guys in their team, you're now going to be cutting costs for the guys who have pinpointed that talent, for the scouts who found Lane Thomas and made that trade for John Lester, for scouts who signed Name That Player, who scouted CJ Abrams and Mackenzie Gore, all those different guys, and James Wood, and the entire trades that the Nationals have made over the years that have looked so good. Obviously, Mike Rizzo is part of that equation as well, and he deserves his credit. But it's not just a lone wolf job. Mike Rizzo has had a staff of scouts, and he's had that for the entirety of his career here. This isn't the pandemic anymore. And you may be losing money, which Ken Rosenthal did kind of say in today's piece in The Athletic. But at this moment, that doesn't really matter because you're not really the team that is losing the most money in this equation. You aren't. When you talk about ownership in Washington, D.C., this fan base, meaning Washington fans, we know bad ownership. We've dealt with Dan Snyder. Back in the day, you dealt with George Preston Marshall, with the former Washington NFL team owner. You've dealt with all those things. We know what bad ownership is. And if you were to tell us right now that Mark Lerner and the Lerner family at this moment are good owners, I don't know about that. You can't really make that argument anymore if you're going to be cutting costs. And yes, I understand this is a business at the end of the day, but it's also got to be a good one because you're one of 30 businesses in this sport. You better be a good one because there's only 30 people on this planet who have the privilege to own a Major League Baseball team. It's not a right. It's not a God-given fact. It is a privilege. And when you get that privilege and you're taking advantage of it by cutting costs and really just saving money to help your bottom line, that ain't good enough. And with this Nationals team, we've seen it across baseball. The Oakland Athletics and what they have done, it's been a joke. You look at the Tampa Bay Rays, and at times it seems like what they do is a little bit of a joke. The Pittsburgh Pirates, they're certainly a joke in this equation as well. And now the Washington Nationals, in which, by the way, in the 2010s, they were in the top 10 in Major League Baseball as far as payroll goes, and as it should be. You're a top market, and you're worth a lot of money, if we're being honest. And now you're not really kind of heading up to your deal of this bargain. You're not really kind of promising the fans of, we don't want you here anymore. That's the kind of optimism that Nationals fans have. And meaning optimism, I mean little to no optimism. I've always kind of defended them. I really have. And even then, I still don't I don't think the Lerner family is even close to the worst owners in all of baseball. You see Artie Moreno with the Los Angeles Angels. They're a joke. The Pirates, the A's with Fisher, all those different managers and owners, all of them, jokes. But the Lerner family at this moment in time, this is a tough look, whichever way you spin it, by either kind of dinking and dunking when it comes to the Steven Strasburg contract, whether it be the Mike Rizzo fiasco and how the report comes out that you're going to be extending him and all of a sudden it seems to be up in the air. And now your assistant GM, Johnny DePuglia, he steps away and resigns out of nowhere. Then Mike Rizzo, the contract, all the Chicago White Sox rumors come out. And then yesterday, Steven Strasburg's retirement ceremony kind of just thrown out the door at this moment in time. And then now today with the story of Ken Rosenthal and The Athletic. This is not good. This is a mess of a situation that shouldn't even be a situation. The story of today's show should be looking ahead to this Dodgers series. And when ownership becomes the story of conversation, and it isn't about Steve Cohen spending the most money ever in free agency, which he has done. If your story is the ownership, 99% of the time, that's a bad story. They should never be in the headlines whatsoever. They shouldn't really be getting credit for anything because that's just kind of how the ownership works. Yes, you spend the money. Yes, you're involved in the process, in which the Lerners have done a fine job in the past. They've signed Max Scherzer. They gave Steven Strasburg his money, whether we like it or not. We were all cheering for it at the moment in time. They've done their end of the bargain here at times. But sitting here right now in 2023, where it seems as if they're cost cutting, where it seems as if they're just in this long court battle with Masson, in which, let's be honest, you can't really feel that sympathetic for him. just because of the fact that they're in this deal. And yes, it does suck for Masson. We understand that. We know it's not the best product out there. But also, you just have to sit here and say, this is a problem. When ownership becomes a story of conversation, not only just in general, but on September 8th, when your season is winding down, for all the rumors over the last year and a half of them selling, and now you're a topic of conversation in which reports are coming out from the organization in which kind of just seem a little bit of a low-hanging fruit. Talking about how Mike Rizzo can be a little moody or whatever word was used in that article. What are we doing? Mike Rizzo, he has a successful track record being a general manager of the Washington Nationals. And if it's not going to be here, he's going to build himself another legacy elsewhere. Priority number one this offseason is to extend Mike Rizzo. And if you don't do that, this fan base might riot. Seriously. That's where we are at this moment. And when you talk about ownership, again, let me reiterate this point. I don't hate the Lerner family. I don't think they're the worst ownership group in all of baseball. I certainly have lost a little bit of stock in them. I can say that. And at this moment, if you were to say otherwise, I would say you're just not telling the truth. Because what has happened over the last 48 hours with a big market team, a family that does have a lot of money, and yes, while it is a business, you don't really take out of your personal accounts and dish over checks, in which Britt Giroli may have alluded to yesterday with Grant and Danny on 106.7 The Fan. That is an issue in itself as well. And attendance is way down from what it was 10 years ago. But you know what also is down? The performance of the Washington Nationals. And I know this about business. I'm not a salesman. I'm not a businessman, but I do know this. It starts at the top. And with the Lerner family and what has kind of happened over the last 48 hours, that's enough for me, man. I'm done. I need this over with. You can't be sitting here telling me that you have confidence in this ownership group spending this offseason when they're cutting out scout salaries. Guys who are integral pieces of your scouting department, guys that you have just hired as of recent, and you're letting them go. It's a bad look all around. It's a bad look for the Washington Nationals. And most importantly, it's a bad look for this ownership group. So at this moment, what are we doing? How can this be fixed? What will happen? They better sell at this moment. Because I've never really felt that way. I've kind of sat back in the scenes and said, I don't hate them. I don't think they're a bad ownership group. In fact, I even thought they were decent at times and relatively solid. They're average, I'd say. That's about it. And I don't really like average because I know what this ownership group once was. They did spend money and they were aggressive. But at this moment, it seems as if they're more worried about the bottom line, in which that doesn't really have the fans' best interest at heart. It sucks. This is a terrible situation. But you know what else is a terrible situation? What's going on with Steven Strasburg? Or is it a terrible situation? I'll tell you after this. But before we get into that, I got to tell you guys about our friends over at Bird Dogs. And guys, Bird Dogs is so good. Listen, I'm not the fanciest guy in the world ever, but here's the thing. When you have comfortable pants like Bird Dogs, mixing it as well with just a little bit of fanciness in there, it makes the best product out there. When I wear my Bird Dogs, I wear them to dinner. I wear them out on golfing trips or whatever it is, because that is how flexible Bird Dogs is. And Bird Dogs also, as I said, just straight up comfortable, because Bird Dog stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. And again, I've talked about this. I have tree trunks for legs, and they fit way better than regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton. And Bird Dogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Bird Dogs uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. Go to birddogs.com/lockedonmlb. Enter promo code lockedonmlb at checkout for a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedonmlb for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. I can promise you that. And thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day. we're still not done with the ownership discussion. Because as we know by now, the Steven Strasburg retirement press conference, whatever you want to call it, set for tomorrow. They were probably going to announce that they were going to retire the number 37, as they should. That has now been postponed. And a lot of people are kind of alluding to the fact that this is because of some contract negotiations going on. And you've kind of seen multiple reports. Bob Nightingale from USA Today Sports, he reported last week, or really 2 weeks ago when Steven Strasburg retired, that the Nationals were going to be paying his contract in full. Since then, I believe he has deleted that tweet. And at this moment, you'd kind of just have to wonder what's going on with this, because we do know this, as I talked about the first 12 minutes of the show, the Nationals are cutting costs. Steven Strasburg is on the hook for a lot of years and a lot of money for this Nationals team. I believe right now behind the scenes and what is kind of going on is that they are negotiating maybe a little bit of a buyout. But also the contract is guaranteed. And when you have multiple national reporters, not Washington Nationals reporter, but national MLB writers, kind of saying, one is saying that they're going to be negotiating a new deal or a buyout or whatever it is, or just something. There is so much confusion with this Strasburg thing, but here's my take. If you were to fraction this relationship with a legend like Steven Strasburg in Washington, D.C., that'll be the last straw for a lot of Nationals fans. And what I mean by that, we all know the mess over the last 48 hours. And the ball got rolling down the hill with this Steven Strasburg news, because that's when kind of people had the alarms go off when they were saying, why is this now being canceled? Because a year ago today, we all kind of knew that Steven Strasburg was most likely not going to be pitching in Major League Baseball again. Let's be honest, that's probably what it was. But now, a lot of people are kind of up in arms about them not paying the rest of their contract. And here's where I'll defend the learners. I will. I'm not necessarily upset if this is what's happening. If they are behind the scenes kind of fighting for what they believe shouldn't be paid in full, this contract as a whole should not be paid 100%. That may be what they're thinking. And if that's the case, honestly, I don't necessarily blame them. I don't. Now, it's not Steven Strasburg's fault, but when you don't play and you just haven't pitched and you aren't going to pitch over the next few years, yeah, you can make an argument as to why they should be battling this. They were going to want to save money on this deal, and we all know it's probably their mistake for not buying insurance for this deal. Yes, 100%, that's the elephant in the room here. You should have bought insurance on the contract, especially for someone who's had a lengthy injury history like Strasburg. But moving forward, I don't really necessarily hate this idea, because if we're owning a business here and you sign someone to X amount of money and you owe them X amount of money over the next 4 to 5 years, and that employee all of a sudden can't do it anymore, but all of that is guaranteed, you'll probably want to fight that deal. You'll probably want to get some of that money back. And now, as long as it doesn't fracture any relationships with Steven Strasburg, with Scott Boras, with whatever it may be, then I think this is going to be okay. Because I will admit, this is still a mess. It's just a bad look because you announce something that is going to be so good. It's kind of just going to be a closure of that 2019 World Series run, really the run of the entire 2010s. You're going to be hearing from Steven Strasburg himself. People will be asking him questions. You will kind of get to the bottom of what he has been going through. And people are antsy about that. They want to hear from him. They want to hear about Steven Strasburg, the legend that he is here in Washington, D.C. They want to see his number retired here. We want to see his number retired here. And at this moment, it's just not a good look because of what has transpired over the last 2 days. So yeah, it's not a great look for him. It's not. Just like yesterday, laying off your scout, basically the entire scouting department. That's also not a good look. But still, when you are part of the story with this ownership group, it's not good. You don't want to be the story. And maybe they just laid the carpet before they got the horse down. Because you announced this ceremony, and not ceremony, you announced this press conference in which people are continuing to say that it's a ceremony. It's not a retirement ceremony. It's a press conference. But it's just sad because this Nationals team, Steven Strasburg, is the face of the organization. He's been that way for a while, even when he's not pitching. He's still one of the faces of this team. He's still the highest paid player on this team, too, and he's going to probably be that way for a couple more years. But I don't really have this entire issue with them trying to battle this out. If it goes to court, whatever. It's not a great look, but I also understand the business aspect of it. They paid him X amount of money to do this. Because the contracts that you get, it's not about what you did, it's about what you're going to do. That's how you get paid in baseball. That's how you get paid in sports and in life. Strasburg, unfortunately, while it was out of his control, I feel for the guy. He's been hurt. He can't control all this stuff. All the nerve damage, it sucks for him. It sucks. But also, he hasn't really lived up to it because he hasn't been able to stay healthy. So the Lerners, they're probably going to battle this. Who knows what will happen because, again, you've seen multiple different reports of guys like Bob Nightingale saying that they're going to be paying the contract out in full. And with the Lerners and kind of their budget cutting over the last few days, you can't help but think they're going to try to pry for every single dollar in that contract. And we'll just have to see how this plays out. Hopefully, it doesn't fracture any relationships because we've seen that in the past. Not with this team, but you've seen it in the past with other teams and organizations. Like the Cleveland Guardians in the past. You think of them a lot. The Oakland A's and a lot of different legacies out there with many different organizations. This could fracture a relationship. And if it does, it's just another bad look on the Lerner family. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen. Of course, the Nationals play the Dodgers tonight, and you can catch every pitch of the Nationals hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Nationals there. And before we preview that series real quick here, let me tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. And guys, NFL is back, and get ready for the NFL season with an incredible offer from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. And now we get back into it as the Nationals are taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers today. And as Mackenzie Gore makes his return from the bereavement list, this is going to be an exciting game tonight just because Mackenzie Gore naturally, after being on the bereavement list, he did get a start skipped. He's been off for about a good week and a half plus. And that's kind of what he needed in my mind. I kind of like that he's getting this big break in between starts because we all know he's kind of needed it. He kind of needed to stretch things out just a little bit, and I think that kind of provided this for him. So going into tonight's matchup, you look at guys like potential MVP Mookie Betts. You look at left-handed hitter, first baseman, someone who has killed us the entire time he has ever played us, Freddie Freeman. It's a scary matchup. It is. But when you have someone like, you know who I'm going to say, Jacob Young, who has been on fire, who has been kind of this team's kind of rallying horse at this moment in time, you feel a little more confident, don't you? That's kind of a joke. But the Nationals, they are going up against Emmett Sheehan, this rookie, 23 years old. He's kind of been utilized as an opener for the most part. He started 8 games this year, 42 and a third innings pitch. He's got a 1.3 whip on the season. And I think this will be an interesting start for this Nationals team because when you go up against someone who is as young as Emmett Sheehan, this guy is still a good pitcher, don't get me wrong, but you can still take advantage of him. You can still kind of get your own way in this game. Now, you have a favorable matchup with Mackenzie Gore going up against Freddie Freeman, but on the other hand, the lefty-lefty matchups, they don't really matter for Freddie Freeman. We know the damage that he can do. And that's also not even to mention Mookie Betts, who has set, I believe, the all-time home run record for batting in the leadoff spot in 2023. He's been killing the baseball, killing it. So when you're going up against this high-powered Dodgers team, you obviously think of those big names. But on the other hand, you actually have an opportunity to steal this win. And if you were to steal this win, it would kind of just bury the stories of the last few days in which we so desperately need. We need them buried. We need them gone. If you beat the Dodgers tonight, you will get rid of those stories. If you beat the Dodgers in this series over this weekend, it'll help kind of water those stories down. Because this is what we want to talk about. This is what I want to talk about. I want to talk about baseball. I want to talk about this team winning. I want to talk about this team beating good teams. I don't want to talk about the ownership mess. I don't want to talk about all these different things when it comes to them. Is it a mess? Absolutely. But it's an annoying mess that I don't want to bring, that I don't want to talk about. I want to talk about baseball. I want to talk about the Nationals beating the Dodgers. And that hopefully can start tonight with your guy Mackenzie Gore on the mound because, of course, it is a Gore day, which is always a fun day. And, of course, you can watch the Nationals play the Dodgers tonight at 7:05 Eastern Time at Nationals Park and catch every pitch of the Nationals hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Nationals there. And, again, thank you all for making us your first listen every single day. Mess of a show. Mess of an ownership situation right now. Hopefully gets cleared up. And let me reiterate this fact. I'm not 100% out on the Lerners yet. But here's what did change over the last few days. They do need to sell. They need to sell. They can overcome this if they were to simply just get out of their own way. But at this moment, can you really trust that they will get out of their own way? Because I don't really think so. And that is kind of the mess. And that is really the story, in my opinion, over the last 2 days, is that they're being in the headlines too much. And that's just taken away from a good product on the baseball field. So hopefully this gets situated. Hopefully all these different things are just kind of overblown and we forget about it in a week. Mike Rizzo has his extension. A scouting department has been rehired and just doing baseball things. That's what you have to hope at this moment. But man, tough 24 hours for this Nationals team. Enjoy the Dodgers series. Enjoy the weekend. Hopefully, just hopefully, we're talking about a series win come Monday. Have a good one. I'll catch you on the flip side.